Well, hello, amigas, and welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. I'm excited here today because I have a beautiful friend, a friend from a while back in my days at the BNI. We've worked on we've worked on some cases. I remember when I used to be going to BNI all the time. She's worked with my business partner Reyes Valenzuela, and she is obviously an attorney, a fabulous attorney. And we've been able to talk many times, as you can imagine, and such a beautiful soul. And I'm so excited to have her here today because we get to talk about estate planning and how important it is, especially in the Latino community. She can tell us nightmares after nightmares when you don't have your estate plan intact. And so it's important, especially now that real estate is rising, people are buying, purchasing things, and have no idea that when you purchase an asset that big, that you need to do some things. And I'm not going to tell you because Elizabeth will be the one to tell you all about it. So, okay, so Liz Apodaca, her law firm is known as My Attorney L.A. and they're in Whittier. And she's been an attorney now for like 20 years now, and she's got a wealth of knowledge. And I'm excited that she's here with us. Welcome, Liz, to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast.
Hi, Jackie. I'm so excited to be here as well. And that was just awesome, all the things you were saying right now.
Oh, I love it. You know, that one thing that I always loved about you, that your integrity, your character was always preceded you, meaning always soft, well-spoken, and very well, very aloha, right? And that is the whole thing about your firm, is very much the Hawaiian flavor. And that is like really amazing because we as attorneys, we tend to be like all aggressive and fight and blah blah blah, but not your practice. Your practice is very different. And let's get started. But before we do get into the nitty-gritty of the practice of law and just estate planning, I want amigas to get to know who you are, Liz. Where are you from, and what you're doing?
Okay, well, a little about me. I grew up in this beautiful town of Whittier. I was raised here, went all up through high school here, but then I went off and I was in the travel industry for a while. And so that's what took me to Hawaii. I worked in the airline industry, I worked in the hotel industry, and I just had some great opportunities to travel the world. Hope to do more travel in the future. That's kind of one of my passions. Seen so many wonderful things, so many heartbreaking things, in other parts of the world that are just not as fortunate as we have it. And we just don't realize that until you actually see it, face to face and talk to those people. So after being in the travel industry, my kids were young and I couldn't be traveling so much anymore. My husband at the time wanted me to stay home. And so I decided I was going to either be a teacher or get into law school. So luckily I passed I did the LSAT, got accepted. I was living in Hawaii at the time, like I say, in the travel industry. So I went to the University of Hawaii and I had such a wonderful Aloha experience there. Such a great school, great community. I worked for some of the biggest law firms in Hawaii right after graduating. But I did all those things that you mentioned, that fighting over money. And that was just like killing my spirit. I just could not go after small businesses where a lot of the, the dependents we were going after, because we did some union where we represented unions, collecting for them, evicting businesses, insurance defense, all those things where you're just fighting over stuff that really in the big picture, it's not that important. I mean, I'm sure it's important to the client, but you have to take those positions, on the client side that it's not always the most ethical and most, community type of position, right? So I'm so glad to be out of that when the Great Recession happened, or whatever it was with the crash in 2009. It was my opportunity to come back home. It left my husband, all those personal things, personal tragedies at the time. My brother died around then, and all of that brought me back to Whittier. And I feel fortunate to be here now. I mean, of course I love Hawaii, but you live where you live and you settle in where you are. And I just love being here in Whittier, reconnecting with college friends, reconnecting with my high school friends. We do so many things together. So anyway, I'm hoping that's what you're wanting to know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is exactly what I want to know, because, as I was looking through your bio, and I know some of it because we've had many conversations, but I know amigas out there who don't know you, that, who maybe don't even know about Whittier, California, because, this podcast is international. So, but the thing that draws me to you is that your easy spirit, your aloha style that you bring to what you do. And I bet that was purposeful in bringing it over here to the city of Whittier, correct?
I think so. I mean, it's just now just a part of me, and it really fits in with who I am, just the mellowness and the community, because, remember, Hawaii is an island. And so the community is within itself. People in Hawaii don't honk when they're cut off. Truly, they try not to cut other cars off, but, driving happens. So people don't honk because you don't know, that could be your best friend's auntie driving that car. It's just such a small little community. And that's how we have to think about living our own lives, is that we're part of a community. And so whatever we do affects other people. There's the butterfly fluttering, analogy. There's just like so many ways of putting it. And for me, the way of putting it is living aloha. You live to interact with others around you, and for the common good, and for the best. And so how I use that to approach what I do in my business is to just try to make the most common sense solution for the client that's sitting in front of me. We don't have to go like over fancy with whatever they need. We don't have to like have the highest price for people to pay just because, hey, I'm a lawyer. It's about, what works best for that individual person and that individual family. And so that's what I feel is being part of the community.
Yeah. And you leaving litigation in Hawaii, which is interesting because there's the paradox, right? Hawaii is about hang loose, everything's easy peasy flow, and you're working for a firm that is completely the opposite of that. So my take from this is that you definitely said, I want to bring Hawaii back to my practice, and you decided to do that. So did you immediately decide to open up your law firm, or did you work for somebody else?
Well, I actually did, think about working for someone else, but I already knew when I moved back to Whittier that I was not going to work for another big law firm. The law firms that I worked for in Hawaii were the biggest there. They're not big by LA standards. They're probably more medium sized, but you're talking like 50 lawyer law firms. And the culture, although it's a little more mellow, it's still that same kind of model where you've got to like bill your number of hours and work as hard as possible. And when the partner has an assignment that they, where the client hires us at, 4 PM on a Friday when you're about to head out for the weekend, and then you have to stay, and, because the partner's not going to stay, they're going to hand it off to, the
Associate.
closest warm body, right? So
Yeah. So leave.
um,
So leave the firm. Leave by 4
yeah.
p.m.
So
Like, don't be there.
yeah, so I didn't care like how much money was available. I just did not want to have that kind of lifestyle,
Yeah.
especially when you think about like fighting the traffic. Traffic in Hawaii is bad. I lived close enough to downtown Honolulu that I didn't have to deal with it. But here, I did not want to have to be in a situation where I spent, my life sitting in traffic, driving into, downtown to go up an elevator and work in a high rise. I don't need that kind of lifestyle. Don't need those kind of like amenities or, status or whatever it is. It's just not, it's not,
It's
it's not
not your vibe.
important to me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not your
I did
vibe
have
anymore.
that ocean view office on the 25th floor
Oh,
in
yeah.
downtown Honolulu.
The
Yeah,
sexy view,
but
all that. Like, it's outside, it's so amazing, so beautiful, but you're inside and you're like, I fucking hate this job.
yeah, it was so tense all the time. You can see the ocean out there with the sun glistening on the water, but it just wasn't worth it. I just didn't
Yeah.
have the right kind of lifestyle
Yeah.
to appreciate that. Yeah.
Exactly. So you brought that beautiful vibe to your practice, and so you decided to do estate planning from the get-go, or was that an evolution for you?
That was an evolution as well. And, we all experience that where we just take advantage of the things that happen to us. And for me, I was wanting to, I knew I didn't want to work for a law firm. I thought maybe a corporation, but the timing just wasn't right. In 2009, 2010, there really were not a lot of available jobs. And, again, the same kind of thing where you're just working for somebody else. So I thought about, going out on my own, and I was going to work on business contracts and, just like help small businesses. But that just really evolved into estate planning, because when you think about estate planning, it's also a contract.
Yeah,
you're contracting with yourself. You're signing an agreement with yourself. So that's what it became. It was about, just documenting the information that every person needs. So, small businesses also need to have their paperwork in order a lot of times though. And, I empathize with that because I'm a small business myself, but you just don't have the money. You just don't have the time to be dotting all those I's and crossing all those T's. So you really need to entrepreneurs just like have that spirit where they just like go out and they're brave and they just do it. But so I didn't have a whole lot of clients, basically.
Yeah.
So that evolved into the estate planning, which I had mentioned my brother had passed away right around that same time. He drowned in 2009 out at Lake Havasu. It was like a tragic accident because he dove into the water, which was 50 degrees or even colder, where it was 114 out on the boat. And, his brain just went into shock. So
It's
everyone
incredible.
listening, take heed. Don't do that. Don't dive in when it's hot outside because, your body could just go into shock. That's what happened.
Oh,
And so
I'm so
it was just
sorry
kind of,
that.
it was like a sudden, unexpected thing. I had to deal with his situation, which actually his lifestyle was pretty simplified. It wasn't like a complicated, he didn't have a whole lot of assets. He didn't have a home. And people who do have a home, they might think, oh, that's not, a huge thing. The bank actually owns it. I don't own my home, but you do own your home. You have a home, that's an asset. It needs to be protected.
Yeah.
And so that's who I like to help.
Wonderful. So, okay, so then we're talking about protecting our assets. And so you and I know that even though we pay taxes when we purchase the damn house, we pay taxes on the land. And so you think, okay, well, I'm going to give this to my kids. And lo and behold, there was no estate plan. What happens?
Well, that's, that happens a lot. I've seen that a lot. Of course, there's a lot of risk when you give away your property because you don't own it anymore. I mean, I've seen situations where now if, the son that you once trusted now is the owner of the property, or daughter, whichever, goes both ways. But, if that person gets married or is married already and the spouse decides that they want to move in the house, the parents have no legal standing to prevent that because they no longer own the home.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the worst case scenario, where the parents just lose all control and have no rights anymore. I've also seen situations, not necessarily that this happened, but that people were worried about it, where they put their children's names on title, and then one of them gets in a really bad car accident. And now they're worried about, oh, they're going to be sued and my house is going to be taken away. And again, I haven't seen that actually happens, because usually there's insurance involved, and
Right.
it's kind of rare, but it could happen. It could happen. And then also, if someone is, if the child who receives the home, they get divorced, that spouse may have rights to that home. So you give away all of the control.
Right.
That's really what you lose. Now, I think what you're getting at too, also, there could end up being a huge tax burden in the long run, because you had mentioned property taxes. Well, that is one type of tax. And there's paperwork, there's law that says that if a child lives in the home and the parent lives in the home and you file the right paperwork, you can keep the property taxes the same, under the Prop 13 level. But there's also another kind of tax that's a capital gains tax, which you pay to the federal government when the asset is sold. So the gain is measured from the date of purchase amount to the ultimate sale. And so in California, I mean, our property, our real estate has just increased in value like crazy, right?
Easy,
So
especially in Whittier.
Yeah, in a lot of places though, like, even 20 years ago, and 20 years ago, like truly is not that long ago. It's 2002. I remember what I was doing 20 years ago, but
right.
But some parents, that are older, they've had real estate since the 70s, since the 80s. They paid less than $100,000 for it. So then they add their children on title. That child eventually will sell the property. Maybe not now because the parents still live there. Maybe not in the foreseeable future. But one day the property will be sold. The gain is going to be measured from the date of that original purchase, and that amount is subtracted from the amount that it's sold for, and you pay tax on the difference. And who knows what the capital gains tax rate could be? That goes up and down all the time, but you just don't know. So
yeah.
The better way is to leave the property in the parents' names and then allow the children to inherit the property. Now that avoids the whole capital gains tax, because when the parents pass away, the value for gain purposes is now the amount as of the date of inheritance, the date of the parent's death, the last parent to die, right? So now that value is a current value.
And that's through when you actually do the trust. Is that when you?
It's actually inherited. So it could happen if a person goes through probate or through a trust. But yes, it's better to do a trust, because then you avoid the whole expense, time, hassle, emotional toll on, on a person by going to court. So either way, but yes, the trust is definitely the more efficient way to transfer property through inheritance.
Yeah, and then also you avoid those the probate fees. Yeah, that if your estate is, let's just say hypothetically, I mean, in Whittier, I don't think you can find any house like, 4-bedroom house for less than 600,000. Like, that's ludicrous. It's like in the millions, right?
Oh yeah. So I mean, even a very modest house is going to be at least 500, 600,000. So you look at those 4 bedrooms, the nicer homes, the ones with the view. Yeah, those are $1 million homes. So
so if you don't have a living trust, then you're stuck with those probate fees,
yes, which are calculated based on the value of the estate, the gross value of the estate.
Yeah.
Yes. So there, a standard probate fee is generally around 12,000, but that's kind of like for a modest estate where the parents just, had a simple home that was not fixed up, investor, buyer kind of home, 12,000, but it can go way up from there as well. And then again, just the time, the emotional factors of the family deciding like who's going to do what, who's going to be in charge, who's going to make those decisions. And that's not always clear cut with every family, right?
No, especially when you have, okay, so when you have one kid, then it's like, easy peasy, because you only have one kid.
Right.
But when you have several kids, and maybe those several kids are married with their own kids,
Right.
You're bound to have a situation where one is going to feel like is owed more than the other kid. And that's where the fights start really happening, right?
Yeah. It's those entitlements,
Okay.
mom liked me better, or I took care of mom. I'm entitled to more. That's what happens. Or I lived in this house for the last 30 years. So that, it doesn't entitle anybody to anything unless it's in writing. Maybe they are entitled, but the parents decide that. If the parents want to say, this one son has never really been able to buy a home, my daughters are married, my other son has a good job, or daughters have, great jobs too, where they're self-sufficient, then, the parents can decide they want this one son who just can't really support himself to have the job, to have the house. And that's perfectly fine if it's what the parents want.
Yeah. And so amigas out there listening to this episode, it's important to settle your affairs before, you're at, I say settle them as soon as you have assets, start settling them, because you don't want to leave it behind so the government decides what to do with it. B, do you really want your kids to pay more taxes? Because that's less money in their pocket. And I'm sure the wonderful parents, they don't want that. So it's important to do these estate plans early on in your life when you start creating your assets, and so that you can build your legacy. Now, since we're talking about certain situations, like I want to I guess bring light to the worst estate planning case that you've had, where not only emotionally taxing for you, but for the family, it was hella crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of one where I did the estate plan that was like, a bad situation, right? We try to like work it out what's the best for the family. But sometimes, sometimes the kids want to like make the decisions for the family, and that can be a problem. But generally, it gets harder when there's mixed blended families. When you have each parent has children from a different marriage. Maybe they have children together, maybe not. But, that's where it can be a little bit dicey, because in California, we have community property laws. And community property says that each of the spouses is entitled to half of that property. So each spouse gets to decide for themselves what they want to do with that half. And sometimes it gets a little crazy, and sometimes, and I see this more with the wives, they don't trust their husbands to not get married after they're gone. They're like, I don't want my husband to remarry and that woman in my bed wearing my slippers.
Oh my God.
We're going to set this up so that, nothing can be changed, which, I mean, we work it out, but that's their attitude from the beginning is he's not going to be single forever. He's going to go out and find somebody else. And, that kind of is true. Men don't like to be alone. I mean, women don't either, but we are a little more independent and I think stronger in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And also it's easier to get a relationship when you're a guy than it is for a woman. Let's just be honest about
more
that.
Picking, more to pick from.
Yeah. Like they don't really discriminate. They're like, okay, young, 20 years younger, who cares? But if they have, if it's the woman the same age as the guy, 20 years younger for a guy with a 40-year-old, whatever, 20-year-old guy and 40-year-old woman, I mean, that doesn't according to many people, it doesn't look good. So,
Yeah.
there's all these issues. I mean,
Yeah,
God, there's
it
so many.
happens.
It
It just
happens.
happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the children, like, then, I mean, I have seen these probate. Usually the problems are when there's probate, when there's nothing in writing. And I have a lot of horror stories of those. And, I'm just finishing up a probate now where the man had gotten remarried, but the children didn't know that he was legally remarried. They thought she was just a girlfriend. And then, so come to find out, like after he dies, she produces the marriage license and they were legally married. And then the woman, in this particular case, kind of abandoned the man when he was really sick and dying. And she just kind of left him to die, basically. So the children are like very, very frustrated because now there's nothing in writing. And so she's entitled to her share of the estate.
And she left him, but came back for the money.
Yes, for the money. And at first they thought, she was going to give it up. But it's very rare in my experience where people walk away from money. I mean, it does happen occasionally, but only when there's close relationships. But, from like an ex or like an ex stepmother, no, that doesn't really happen. And so now I have this one particular case that I'm talking about. We're about to close it. So the wife finally said, yes, I'm going to take my share. And then one of the other children, not my client, but another of the children says, well, I'm going to object. This is not right. And, he just kind of like blew up my ear telling me this whole story about how horrible she was. But, that is the law.
Yeah, you should have done something when he was alive.
Yes, he should have done something. And he didn't. And it's unfortunate, but it's what it is. It's the state's solution for deciding who gets what.
Yeah.
And
it's the law codified everything. There's statutes, there's case law, there's everything to back up this woman. Who cares if she was a bitch? Who cares if she doesn't matter, because you had an opportunity to, whatever you're saying, that she was horrible and whatever it is.
Probate doesn't care.
No.
That's what I want to tell people sometimes. Probate doesn't care. It doesn't matter.
No, exactly. It's like there's no difference.
Right.
The details are irrelevant. It's just the act.
Yeah.
It's just that,
Yeah.
Wow, that sucks for the kids, but that kid needs to learn a lesson with that, for future, for him and for his family, that resolve your estate affairs, be candid with your kids, and if you're going to get married again, then let them know that she's going to get the other half.
She's going to get what she's entitled to. But it's true. It's important for people of every age, not just elders, not just people who are in second relationships. I mean, there's a whole long list of people that really should have an estate plan, people with minor children, people with special needs children, people who have stepchildren. But, the bottom line really is everyone who owns a home should have their home in a trust. They really, that's the best way to transition it, unless it's like business property or, rental property, business is a whole nother topic. But, for people who like owner occupied homes, they want it to transition easily to the next, the next generation. It should just be in writing from the very beginning, as soon as they sign that deed. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And amigas out there, because this happens a lot in the Latino communities where there's like these straw buyers, right? They're the ones that put in the cash, but somebody else takes title on the house. And well, guess what? Guess who's going to be changing? Who's going to be doing the estate plan? The person that took the title. So amigas out there, please do things ethically and the right way, or else you're going to get in trouble, especially at the moment of death.
Yeah, I've seen that happen in what you're talking about, where, it's relatives, and for whatever reason, I have a case right now where the man died. He died of COVID last year in 2021, I guess. And he had a girlfriend because he didn't have documents, right? He wasn't a legal citizen. So he put the title of the property in the girlfriend. Well, of course, after he's gone, she's off and on her own. Like now she owns all this property. So the brothers came back and they're suing her. Well, he was actually suing her while he was alive to get it back. But it's harder once he's gone. And so we're still pursuing that. But it does happen. It does happen.
Exactly.
Best to get it in writing.
In writing, amigas, making sure that it's the correct people who are on title. Oh, wonderful. I love these things. So any tips for us before we wrap this up? Like I always ask my guests who come on the podcast, like the name of the podcast is Amiga Handle Your Shit. So do you have any tips on how an amiga can handle her shit?
Well, to just get good advice, get advice from the right people you trust, not some online thing where you don't have to talk to anybody, because younger people now, they don't want to talk. I mean, my daughters, they don't want to pick up the phone and talk to anybody, right? So let's just go online and do the chat or whatever. But that is not going to customize it to your particular situation. So if you're going to get advice, make sure it's, of course I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to say you should get it from a licensed professional, because professionals are accountable, and we have our malpractice insurance. We are going to be there to fix things if they go wrong, whereas some document preparation or other non-licensed individuals can just tell you whatever they tell you, and they're not really allowed to give legal advice. But also, like the do-it-yourselfers, and there are a lot of people that maybe are capable of doing that. But if you have, for years I did my tax on my own. I did TurboTax, I admit. But when you have a special situation where you want like particular advice, just talk to the right person.
Right.
And my services are not like out of the world expensive. My goal is to have like a neighborhood office so that homeowners can just like come to their, like State Farm, right? You have your neighborhood insurance guy. So you need to have your neighborhood attorney there for you to give you some like real guidance.
Right.
And consultations are free. It's just, that's my advice, is to get the right kind of, kind of advice.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Exactly. I see it all the time in immigration where they're talking to notary attorneys, which they're not even attorneys. They're just notaries.
Yes.
Very different notary here in the United States than it is in Mexico.
Right.
In Mexico, they are licensed attorneys who are notaries. And so there's this huge confusion when they come to the States. They think these notaries know the law. No, they do not know the law. They pretend, they think, but they're not. They didn't pass the bar, which, by the way, it is one of the toughest bars in the entire United States to pass. So I'm just saying, amigas out there, go take advice from a real professional who is licensed and is able to cater to you in the way that you deserve, especially when you're leaving a legacy behind.
Yes, because if they screw up, they're not going to fix it. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. That's just, you may not even get a sorry.
You won't.
Just, oh, well,
Oh, well. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yes, so I'm really, I love this advice. I think it really resonates, obviously, with me being a lawyer, but I'm sure it resonates with a lot of amigas out there listening to this podcast, because in a Latino community there tends to be a lot of fraud, and there's like misinformation of the law. And rather than you go and talk to your neighbor, and then you go talk to the storekeeper, and you're getting advice from everybody, but you're not going to the right person. So amigas, go to the right person. If you are looking for an estate plan, go to Liz, because she knows it. She knows it exactly. She's been doing this forever, so she knows every piece, a part of estate planning. So thank you so much, Liz. This is wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. This was a lot of fun for me as well. I love talking about this.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So where can they find you? You sit in Whittier, but it's called My Attorney LA.
My Attorney L.A. That's my website. I'm easy to find.
Okay.
And yes, and we could do, telephone, Zoom. We can do remote consultations for people who find it a little inconvenient to get out to Whittier. But, we're kind of centrally located, right on the border of LA and Orange County.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
That's
maybe soon we'll be in your neighborhood
woohoo!
one day.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm so grateful to you here for spending some time here at Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. Thank you so much, Liz Apodaca.
Thank you, Jackie.